Hello and welcome to this video tutorial from cgcookie.com. My name is Jonathan Williamson, and today we're going to be looking at modeling a kind of stylized, semi-cartoonish, semi-realistic praying mantis within Blender. Now we're going to base it off of this quick sketch that I did earlier. Now keep in mind there's nothing too realistic about it or necessarily accurate. We've definitely got enough room to take some liberties, and obviously it's not a real detailed drawing, so we're going to keep things fairly simple, such that you could either use it as a sculpting base, you could take it a little further and make it realistic, or you could use it as a cartoon model, so you could really pretty much go anywhere with it. But we're going to have a little fun, and so let's just get right to modeling. And so I've already set it up with a background image, and then I've got a default cube set up, along with my default lighting setup here. Now for the time being we can just ignore that, and so I'm just going to swap over to layer 1. Let's go right in, and the first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and add a mirror modifier. So I'm going to hit tab and hit Control R, middle click, and then like I've always done on all my tutorials that involve the mirror modifier, I'm going to go ahead and switch to wireframe mode with Z, use my B for box select, select the left side, hit X, delete vertices, and then go right on down and add a mirror modifier. And then I always like to turn on dew clipping, and I like to enable the cage during edit mode so that I can work on either side if I want, or mostly select on the other side since it's reversed if I work on the mirrored side. But primarily I can also see it. And then we can just select everything and get right on to modeling. And what I'd like to do is go ahead and start out by modeling the primary body. And since this is an insect, we can kind of, we'll have a little more liberty in terms of the connection on the joints, and making them a little more defined than, say, a very organic shape. Insects, not robots, are nice in the sense that they are kind of, the natural robot. There's where my mind was going. And that a lot of the joints don't even look organic a lot because of their exterior, their shell. And so we can definitely have a little bit of fun with that and making that part of a style statement as well. So what I'm going to do is I've just got this down here at the body. I'm just doing some simple shaping, getting the bases of the body here. And you'll notice I'm going between the legs here, and so then we'll extrude it out again. But for the time being, let's go ahead and just extrude this right up along the neck. So we can kind of scale this down. And, obviously I'm compensating for the differences in my drawing. And we'll just scale this up. We'll maybe put, make sure we've got plenty of room for another joint. And so I always like to put an edge loop on each side of a joint when initially modeling. Something like this. And then we'll extrude right up to the head, and then we can go ahead and extrude again to the top of the head. Oops, and I've got an extra selection in there. Extrude again to the top of the head, so that then we could extrude out like so for the bases of the mouth. Remember, we're just kind of getting this simple shape right now, using a little bit of box modeling techniques, whatnot. Here we are. So then we can go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and extrude everything out once more, or to the side like this, and then we'll just hit W and smooth a couple of times to kind of smooth that out in general. Because then we can go in and start getting a little more shape to it. For example, here obviously we want to scale along the x-axis, maybe bring it in a little bit. We'll maybe take these two side ones, scale them way in. Same thing here. Bring them in. Just modeling to fit the form. Okay. On the side, I'm going to bring these ones in as well. Bring it in for the neck. Select the two adjacent to it. Bring them in. Make sure the whole neck is, pretty nice and small. Okay, and then I want to be sure that these are nice and rounded, so I'm going to pull out this back edge here. So, as you can see, I'm just going for the form. Maybe bring this down a little. I'm going to take this side in, so I'm rotating along the z-axis, rotating just along its normal axis, pulling all these in. We just want to be sure that we don't have any really flat surfaces anywhere. While yes, it's, kind of, like I was telling earlier, it's almost a robotic form, in the sense that it doesn't have the flowing organic aspect that a lot of things do. We still need to make sure that we don't have any sharp edges where we don't want them. So particularly like here along the body and whatnot. Okay, so this is working well. I'm going to go ahead and continue smoothing this out a little bit. Bring these up. Bring that up. Then let's maybe, now that we have that, let's go ahead and go down and take this on down to the base of the tail. So we're just going to extrude, and we're just going to, kind of approximate all this. Maybe move these up to fit the underneath of the wing casing a little. Maybe bring that in. Let's get along the x-axis a little bit. Do it again. Maybe scale this one up a little more. And so I'm just getting the general shape down. Okay, scale it down. And then we'll do that one more time. And then let's just smooth everything. So I'm just hitting W smooth multiple times. And we'll bring the tip back in a little bit. Okay, there we go. So now we have the rough form of the body. And real quick, I'm going to go to my view properties and turn off my grid floor, just so it's not so distracting when rotating our view around. Okay, and we need to pull this in along the x-axis, scale it in, and there we go. So now we've got the rough shape of the main body of our praying mantis. Let's go in and work on the head now and do some detail work. So first thing, let's bring this in for the nose. Oops, I've got an extra selection in there. There we go. So we'll bring this in, so I'm scaling along the x-axis. Let's go ahead and add in a new loop here. And one thing that you'll notice on praying mantis is they have these ridges, almost looks like armor plating along their heads. They do have a armored head, and so we want to try and kind of replicate that, so we can even use that as a guideline for where we place our edge loops. Very, very handy. Mother Nature is very, very helpful at times. Okay, so that's good there. And then let's go ahead and we'll maybe move this back and add in another loop there. And we can use this again as for these ridges here. So we're just kind of approximating things. Maybe bring this out a little bit, start getting a little more of that shape. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in another loop here, right along the neck, such that then I can take this out without too much worry. Get a little more of that shape there. And then before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and add a sphere as a separate object, just a UV sphere that we're going to use as the eyes. And I always like to use 12 segments and 12 rings. I find it's a good number that you can get things nice and smooth with a subsurf modifier, but if you don't want to use subsurf, then you don't even need to necessarily. And so then I'm just going to kind of position this about right, and apologize for that pop-up there for my calendar. Good old notifications. And we'll add a mirror modifier to this. There we are. Okay, and we'll enable the cage, even though we don't necessarily need to. And so this then allows me, I'm going to be able to model around this much easier. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and delete this face, just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 loops here with Control R for the loop cut. Pull this back along for the back of the head, just like so. And then we can, continue working on the shape here. Okay. And I want to go ahead and pull this in and this in, as these are going to form the main loops around my eye. Just like this. We can pull these around to right behind the eye. The praying mantis its eyes almost sit out by themselves. And since we're kind of going to take a little bit of a stylized look on this and a little bit cartoony, we can definitely accentuate those features, and so we can almost have our eye floating in space if we so choose, but we're just going to have it kind of approximated. So at this point, I'm We can pull this in a little bit more, make sure it's got plenty of the eye. And let's just select this loop, which we can do by alt-right clicking, and then we're going to hit E to extrude, only edges, right-click, and scale down. And then I want to just go ahead and position this, and I'm just going to bring it in fairly close to the eye. We may need to do some more moving of the previous edge there. And we'll maybe bring these out a little bit more. So I'm just moving these one by one. You can just right click on it, hit G to move, get it positioned about where you want it. Okay, and again, the main thing we're going for is the feeling of the mantis. So, okay, there we go. And now let's go ahead and extrude this in, and that'll form our, we can definitely pull it in a little bit now, and then we'll extrude in one more time just for this, just in case. And that'll kind of form the eyelid effect, even though it doesn't really exist on a bug's eye. We still get that ridge there. And we're going to be adding probably adding a subsurf modifier to this shortly, but for the time being we'll leave it. So remember, we can just kind of approximate things. Okay, so already you can start to see, we're starting to get the feeling of a mantis. Let's work a little more on the head here. Let's go ahead and bring in the lower jaw, so we can select this area, pull it up, and then we're going to let's go ahead and select this edge, and we'll just rip it away. So hit V to rip it, and then we can do the same thing. Oh no, I'm not actually going to do that one just yet. And then we'll just extrude this up over like that. And on the mantis jaw, I don't know exactly how their anatomy works, but based on the references that I could find, basically you have a top jaw and a lower jaw, and then you have two finger-like protrusions coming out here that connect to the side of the mouth. And so we'll do something similar to that. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and delete this face. And then we want to extrude these edges up, just like so. And we're going to go ahead and delete these two vertices as well. Okay. And I want to go ahead and let's make our edge loops following along here so that they're correct. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and rip this vertice away and add in an edge loop right down here. And we're going to go ahead and rip these away we're going to leave that as is and just go ahead and hit W and subdivide on this edge, and then we'll clean up these triangles later. But I want to fill this vertex, or fill that face, and then we're going to actually subdivide this one again as well. And you don't see me use subdivide very often, but I'm going to go ahead and use it today. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually merge these two vertices and merge that one as well, just to get rid of that extra loop in there that I don't need. And we're going to slide all these up here to lengthen the jaw, or shorten it, I guess. And then we can go ahead and fill in these triangles here. Although actually I want to go ahead and delete these faces because I want to improve this edge flow, which I can do real easily by just hitting F and then extruding these twice and filling in faces like so. So now this keeps a continuous edge flow around here, and we can actually delete this face at that point. Okay, so then maybe we'll go ahead and add in another loop here, and let's maybe go ahead and extrude this out once. We can then fill in that face, add in a loop here, fill in the face, and let's maybe go ahead and we'll bring this straight down like that, so we kind of continue this primary flow down like this, and then we can fill in that vertice there. And then we'll go in and do a little bit of cleanup work. And we're not going to do too much more on this because we're really not going for lots of detail here. But we do want to get a nice clean mesh. And if you look at any Mantis pictures, you also notice that the tip of the nose is almost a bulbous effect, and so we can kind of accentuate that via this. Okay, and we want to go ahead and bring this up more, and we'll bring it in along the x-axis, and then we can bring this loop around. We'll slide this loop down, so that's Control E to edge slide. There we are. Okay, and let's see. Let's go ahead and just kind of take a whole look at this. And let's add in another edge loop right here, which will allow us to get a little more definition on the head and also better shape the eyes. And so then what I'm going to do is, since we want these kind of ridge effects, the armored look, we're just going to pull up like that. And that'll give it that there. And another ridge there. Keeps it very simple, but very quickly adds that little bit of detail. And then we can maybe improve this by adding in another loop there and shaping that more. And maybe pull that back and pull that back. Pull these ones out. There we go. Okay, now let's go and add the tendrils of sorts. And I'm actually going to extrude this whole inside of the mouth in. And we'll kind of pull that up there. Deselect these portions. Pull that back, deselect that one, down. And so just kind of positioning the whole thing there, just so that we can add in a little more depth to this if need be. And I'm going to go ahead and select the whole corner of the mouth here. Pull it in. Just doing a little more cleanup work on that. Okay. So again, this is looking pretty good. Let's maybe pull down the top jaw here, like this. Okay, and we can go ahead and add the finger-like projections right now. And the way that I'm going to do that is there's really actually no need to connect these, although we may connect them just for exercise sake. But let's go ahead and just position our 3D cursor right about here from the side view and from the front view as well. And then we're just going to hit spacebar, add cube. Need to turn off our do clipping momentarily, scale it way down, like so. Oh, I have to save my file. And since I'm recording and saving to an external drive, it's taking a little longer. Okay, and then we'll just scale that down and position it right about the corner of the mouth. And then we're actually going to just scale it up to the length that we want. And then we can just add in, say, 3 loop cuts that then we'll pull out along the x-axis. It's like the tip here. We can scale it down, add in another loop there, scale that way down to add a little ridge so it almost gets a claw effect. If you look closely at a praying mantis, scale that down, scale this down, maybe scale this one up, and then we'll just delete this face here in the case we got a subsurf modifier, rotate it around, and then take the entire thing and better position it perhaps here. Kind of rotate it to fit a little better, like so. We'll intersect that edge. And remember, since it's an insect, we can get away with doing stuff like this, particularly if we add in another loop around it to add almost like a joint effect, which we'll go ahead and do we just add another loop and scale that way up so it looks like, it's bulging out right there. And the reason we can get away with this is because of the exterior skeleton on most insects. A lot of areas it doesn't even look like it's attached. And since this is a little more stylized and fairly simple, we can get away with that for now. So for that, we'll go ahead and leave that. And let's go ahead and leave the head like it is right now and just continue moving on. So let's go ahead and add in the arms and the legs just real quick. They're going to be real quick and easy. So let's start with the legs. First, we'll just go ahead and position our cursor right about the front leg. Go into edit mode, hit spacebar and cube. Turn off do clipping, scale it down, do clipping back on. And remember, we're going to add a subsurf modifier, so we don't need a lot of detail on these. We can probably just leave them as cubes. We'll scale it down or scale it up along the Z-axis by S and Z for the length of the first joint. Then we can add in a double loop cut, and we'll just scale that up. And then we can scale this down for the joint, maybe rotate it, extrude along the normal, scale it again, scale it down, extrude out, move it down, and we're gonna just working on the angle from the front view for now. We'll also add in another loop right here for the joint and scale it up, add a little more effect to it. We'll do the same thing on the smaller joint. Again here, scale it up, and that just adds a little bit of bulge there. And then we'll extrude this down. And although you can't see it in my drawings, I actually have a third joint here. Which then kind of curves around. And we're going to scale up along the Z-axis, like so. And on the bottom edge, scale it down, so it's almost like a knife edge. There we are. Something like that should work well. Okay, and now we'll go ahead and rotate this along the Z-axis. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate around the cursor by just hitting P on my keyboard, or excuse me, period. And we'll rotate this around something about like that. And then let's go ahead and rotate around our local axis, or our bounding box center, which is comma. And we can go in and select the top portion here, scale it down, rotate a little bit, move it in. We don't want to lock it to the center though. We'll delete this face, just to be safe, so when we add a subsurf modifier, it doesn't affect it too much. We'll scale these down. And remember, this is we'll start really seeing this take effect once we add in all the other parts and then add subsurf to it. And so now let's just duplicate this leg for the back. So we'll Shift D to duplicate, rotate it around, bring it back. And I want to keep it at the same height. And so then we'll just deselect here, pull these down, rotate. Oh, and gotta step back a few steps as we had do clipping on. There we go. Now we'll move it back, rotate around, get in position there, deselect the bottom half of the leg, move these down, rotate, move it down a little more, move it in, we'll go in, move this into our model, maybe extrude once more, scale it in. Okay, there we are. this back to line up so we've got a good angle there. And then we can go in and rotate our joint just a little bit. There we go. Now you can really start it to see it's starting to look like a praying mantis. And so we're going to save this, and we'll go ahead and do the top arms, which this is where once we really start to add things in, it'll start to get a lot of fun since we've got, you know, our scissor blades here. And so I'm just going to go ahead and we're just going to select this edge and duplicate it. So we'll move it up. Oh, and we got a part of the back leg there. So we'll rotate this around and making this far more work than it actually is. There we go. And just so it's easy to extrude, I'm going to go ahead and fill in a face here. Scale it down. Move it into place. Then we'll go ahead and extrude out, scale up. I want to select everything to solid, so I selected everything, hit W, set solid. Scaling that back down. And then we're just going to rotate this, make sure it's good angle. Extrude this straight down. Scale down. And I'm going to primarily use the side view for my main reference here. And so then we're going to do the joints just like we did before. There we go. Extrude that straight up. Or, well, straight up along the normals anyway, not straight up along the z-axis. Add more thickness here. And then we can go ahead and we're going to do this joint a little differently since it's such a sharp joint. And what we're actually going to do is, this is actually a technique that I like to use on fingers. And we're going to hit E to extrude, and then immediately right click, deselect this bottom half here, move it up, select the bottom half again, hit E, extrude, region, deselect the bottom half, move it over, and then select everything, hit W, remove doubles, and that should not have removed 6. We may have a duplicate somewhere else. And so I'm just going to select this area, hit W, remove doubles. Okay. And then we can select these two triangles, face one side at a time, and hit F to merge them into a single quad, get rid of those triangles. And now we have this nice joint here that then we can extrude from a little easier. And actually, I'm going to do that one last time, and we're going to actually now extrude from right here. And we'll just extrude that straight down. Maybe scale down a little bit. And then we're going to extrude again. And we're going to primarily follow this path here. So we'll extrude this again. And then one more time. Just fix those angles there that I'd messed up. And then from here, we can extrude in this last little bit. Okay, and now we want to go ahead and add in several loops along here. So I'm going to do 3, and we want to add a bit of a bulge here so that we get the scissor action, or the cutting blades. So we'll just pull those out along there, like so. And then let's go ahead and add in 2 loops. Yeah, 2 loops along here. And we're going to hit Alt-S and scale along the normals outwards. And then let's go ahead and select these 2 loops and hit Alt-S and scale in. And then we may need to do a little modification. We can deselect these pull these back down. And then we'll maybe, scale these down right there. This back edge I want to be pretty thick, but this one we're kind of going for a knife edge here. Remember, it's the cutting edge. There we are. And we could even go ahead and pull these ones in as well. Get a little more of that knife effect going on. Grab the wrong vertice there. Here we are. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and leave that as is. We'll probably come back to it here in a little bit. Once we just want to go ahead and model the wing casing real quick, and then also his back armor and I realize we missed the antennas on the head, which we can do real quick by selecting this face here, and we're going to hit E to extrude, W, smooth. We'll just smooth it a couple of times. More like 10 times. Move it up slightly, hit E to extrude, scale up, take it back, and then extrude again and scale it down so we get that ridge, and then just take it straight back a couple of times, get a little bit of a curve to it, scaling down each time. There we go. And maybe we'll do a little backwards curve, get a little more definition, a little more shape and character to it. There we go. Okay, so now on the back armor plate, we can go and do this real quick and easy. What I'm going to do is just select the primary portion of his back, and then we're just going to hit Shift D to duplicate it. Make sure do clipping is turned on. We're going to, and I want to step back a little bit and deselect the antenna tips. Hit Shift D, scale it up, maybe hit Alt S to scale along the normals a little bit, which will add that thickness. And then we just want to round things off, like so. Maybe bring this one in. Following the basics of the drawing. And this is definitely a part where you can definitely have a little fun with it. Okay, and then we want to add thickness to the whole thing by just selecting the outside loops, and we'll hit E to extrude, take them in, maybe scale down just a little bit, scale along or pull it in along the x-axis a little bit. And you can see we want to pull this one back up so it's behind the arm, and then we can just select everything again. And what I'm actually going to do is let's go ahead and duplicate the whole back again, and we're just going to move it down, maybe scale down a little, and then we're actually just going to go through. I should have probably just done this originally, and then we can just go in and merge each of these vertices at center. And so that'll add our underlayer to the armor and make sure that we're not seeing through the mesh at any point. This will be one nice thing to look forward to in 2.5 with its actual history and tentatively macro recording, is we'll be able to just do this once and then simply select it and hit repeat, which will be very, very nice and handy. Okay, there we go. So there's that armor. Maybe we'll bring this in a little bit, like so. And something that we can do is they tend to have a ridge along here. And so let's just select all of these back faces along the surface. We'll hit E to extrude, right click, and then let's hit W and smooth. Maybe do it twice, and then maybe pull it in along the x-axis a little bit. pull it up, and then hit E to extrude once more, hit W, smooth once, and then pull it in. And then going to vertex mode, you can see we need to pull this whole edge up, or actually, we've got one of the interior ones that's poking through, and so then that adds that little ridge to it. And we can maybe sharpen up these bottom ones a little bit. There we are. Okay, now we want to do the wing casings, which I'm just going to find this portion on the back that I like. That will give us the same general shape. And so we'll maybe select these on back to these. Here we go. And then we're just going to hit Shift D and turn off do clipping for a moment because I want to move it sideways. Rotate just a little bit because remember it's the wing casings. And then let's go ahead and add in a loop cut here, which will allow us to pull that up, select these, fill in that loop. Okay. And let's go ahead and maybe select everything, hit W, smooth once or twice. Yeah, we'll just do once for now. And we want to go ahead and pull this up here, pull these up, maybe around, smooth it. So again, we're just going, following the shape here. And we want to be sure that we're going over the legs, not under them, or through them more like. He doesn't need legs, does he? Okay. And again, I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the back. Well, actually, we're just going to select this. We'll maybe round it off a little bit. Let's select this loop, extrude, pull it up, and then we'll kind of round these off so that we can fill in this loop. Nice thing is that also gives us this whole edge loop that continues on around. In the case that, if we want to do the same thing that we did on the back plating and add in that ridge. Let's go ahead and add thickness to the whole thing here. Oh, actually, first let's do a little more shaping along the back. And so what I'm going to do is let's go in and we can just merge these three vertices, which will again continue on that loop, like so. Let's pull these back. Pull these in, getting that shape. Pull these up. Get a little more volume to it. Okay, now let's go ahead and add depth to the entire thing by just taking this, hitting E to extrude, pulling it straight in, making sure we're not crossing the x-axis anywhere. And in this case, we don't really need we don't need to do the inner level, as we're not really going to see that anywhere. But maybe we'll go ahead and intersect the mesh a little bit here so that we can kind of fake that joint. Okay, and we may go through and actually connect this later down the road, but let's go ahead and see how this looks first. So that's pretty much everything modeled. Let's go ahead and add our subsurf modifier. So we hit add modifier and subsurf, turn up levels 2, optimal draw. Let's go in and set smooth on everything. Make sure we don't need any normals flip, so we'll just do it just to be safe. And that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and do a few things style-wise. Let's go and add this ridge along the back, or along the wing casing, which we can do, but just add another loop there. Maybe pull this vertice up, add another loop there, and just hit Alt-S and scale slightly along the normals. We'll add that ridge. That immediately adds a huge amount of style to it. Oh, and let's go ahead and add a subsurf modifier and set smooth to our eyeballs as well, just so it's nice and smooth. Okay, let's go in. We can maybe accentuate the joints here. Maybe just scaling them up a little bit more. And so you can immediately see how quickly little things like this affect our model. So we're just moving them down. Fit the joints a little better. Okay. And let's maybe work on this joint a little bit more. Let's go and add in another loop right there. And add in, say, 2 more loops here. And we're going to add a bit more of a curve or inner curve to this and curve there. There we go. Let's maybe pull this up some, like so. And I'm going to go ahead and add in another edge loop here, scale it up, and that's because I want to take these, and this may not be realistic in terms of actual mantises or not, but I think it'll work for style-wise, and we're going to just scale this up, get a little bit of a bulbous effect going on there. There we go, that definitely helps. And we'll maybe go ahead and scale these ones up as well. A little bit of a knob going on. Okay, and we can maybe even, say, take this face, pull it up, accentuate, get a little more style to it. And let's go on in and add in a whole bunch of loops here, like so. Actually, I want even more than that. Let's go ahead and do a full 6, because then what we're going to do is pull up every other one here. I'm going to start here. Pull them up like this. That little bit adds that extra shape. We'll maybe do this one a little more than others. And then we could even slide these in a little bit. Add even more shape, add another loop here, scale that up, make sure we've got a good joint. We'll scale it down, and then go in and add that loop, scale it up. Okay, and to make it look a little better along the attachment for the body, first off, let's go ahead and select, you can't really see it, so let's hide the body real quick, so let's just L and hide, and we want to go ahead and get rid of these faces here. We'll just select it, hit X and faces, then we can Alt-H to unhide. And something that we can do, I'm going to go ahead and select the shield again and hide it. To make the joint a little better along the body would be to add an edge loop on each side, and then all around it, kind of pull these out a little bit. Just so we're seeing a bit of a bulge around the joints. And maybe add an edge loop again below that to make sure that we don't go too far. And also it'll again help add that little more definition so it's not blending over the entire length. There we go. Maybe we'll do a little bit of that with the legs. Add another loop there, which also allows us to get a little more shape to the neck that we didn't have before. Maybe bring a loop there, scale it up, and then take this out like so. Bring that back down, that one down. So again, it's just that little bit does definitely help. Okay, and we'll do the same thing on this one here. Also scale it down a little bit, as that'll again kind of bring it in towards the legs. There we go. This is starting to look pretty good. Let's go in and work on the head just a little bit, and then we're pretty much going to call it done. We'll just add some simple materials. Let's go and add in a loop here, and pull that in. We want a nice crease right here. If you look at pictures of real mantises, they have a pretty sharp crease around at least the front of the eye. Around the back it's a lot smoother, so we'll go ahead and smooth those out. Let's go ahead and pull these apart and then select that face, and we'll go ahead and select this one here, and we're going to add in a double loop cut or a double knife cut by hitting K and knife multi-cut, and just draw right across it, click across each edge and hit enter. And then we can go in, let's select this triangle and this quad. We're going to hit Control E, rotate edge, and rotate edge again, and one more time until we have the quad over here. And what this then allows us to do is pull this up and get this kind of diamond effect going on, convert it to a quad by selecting it and hitting F, and then we can pull it down and get that ridge that we were really wanting. So then we can also pull this one up, get a little more of a ridge there, pull this in. And so then, we could do that again if we wanted, or we can just go ahead and add another whole loop right there, scale it down. That's maybe a little too bulbous. Okay, and we're going to maybe slide this edge down and then scale it in. There we go, just kind of flatten that out a little bit. And let's see, what else do we want to do with this? I think we're going to go ahead and, just for time reasons, going to go ahead and leave that right where it's at. Let's go ahead and do some, well, first off, let's just render this. So using my default lighting setup, we'll maybe change our camera angle just a little bit. And let's hit render, just to kind of check it out. Okay, that's looking pretty sweet. Let's go ahead and, I like the green, so let's change this up to a nice, kind of a bright green material, or kind of a natural green. And we'll maybe add a slightly yellowish ramp shader to it, so we can just go into our ramps, hit color band, and if we want this to appear along the outside edge, let's swap these two sliders and change the blue to a kind of greenish yellow, something along that line. And we're going to change the input to shader, and this will cause it to show up around the outside edge. And hit render now, kind of see what this is looking like. Cool, we're getting a very bright green. Let's maybe pull this in a little more and make it a little more powerful. Maybe make it a little bit more yellow. Hit render now. There we go, that's looking pretty sweet. So we're going to leave that color as. Notice we're cutting off the bottom leg, so we'll kind of pull that in. Maybe let's change our camera angle just a little bit more. Hit period to rotate around the cursor, and hit R, and then middle click, and we can get a kind of a trackball effect going on if we want to get a better camera angle. Maybe we'll, just whatever works. We'll go ahead and just leave that like that. And let's add let's just use a bright white for the eye, so we'll just, this is just real quick, eye, and we're going to make this a solid white. We'll increase the specularity a little bit, increase the hardness quite a bit, and let's maybe add a blue ramp shader to it, so we get almost a pearl effect. And we'll make this a much lighter blue. Again, change it over to normal, so it's around the outside edge, and let's hit render. Very, very cool. Okay, so there we have it. It's modeling a fairly simple praying mantis that you could then use for sculpting. You could use eccentric cartoon character. You could, pretty much take it as far as you want. But hope you enjoyed this tutorial from CG Cookie, and keep paying attention, and we will continue releasing more and more. And once more, my name is Jonathan Williamson, and I will see you next time. Thanks again.